back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour, fresh off a Byron Murphy extension, signing, whatever it may
extension.
be.
It's called an extension.
It is a 3-year, $66 million contract worth $22 million per year. We were worried that it wouldn't happen, that the Vikings weren't going to get a corner as the day kind of went on, but here we are towards the end of the evening. Byron Murphy gets his. Miles, before we went live, you were just saying something about Kwesi.
Well, hold on. I just saw the news. It's $35 million guaranteed. Just a heads up on that. Saw that for the first time, so I wanted to mention that too. Yeah. And we can maybe get into like what the other cornerbacks that signed today, what their guarantees look like too. Because I always like to compare that way, not just like the total numbers, but what are the guarantees look like. But the one thing that I was saying before we hopped on was this, and you guys tell me what you think, but does it feel like the first true like overpay from Kwesi for like a free agent, whether it's a re-sign or a new pending free agent, like an overpay? And I don't mean not that Byron Murphy, he's been here, so I always felt that if Byron Murphy was going to come back, he was going to get more than you probably expected him to. I didn't expect 22 per, but I was expected it to be like a higher number. But this just feels like one of those. I'm not going to freak out because they needed a corner, and I think I said before, I would rather overpay for somebody you know than overpay for somebody you don't know. Yeah. I think that's a big one. It's still a lot of money, so I don't want to like sit here and just like underplay that. But I'm just curious, like you guys let me know what, like, does this feel like the first, I guess, quote unquote overpay that from Kwesi?
Go ahead, Matt. No, you got it.
Nope. I'm deferring to you.
Okay. Hearing the $35 million guaranteed makes it feel less of an overpay than in the initial shock reaction. So again, when these deals get announced on Twitter or whatever it is that you're getting your information on, you hear 3 years, $66 million. Holy crap, we're paying this guy $22 million per. That's a lot of money. That's an overpay in of itself. However, what's the structure of the deal? How much of that is incentive laden? Like, is it true $66 million, or is it a $55 million with $11 million in incentives or whatever it is, right? Like there's different way to structure that, but the $35 million guaranteed doesn't make, like, when whoever said that, it wasn't Matt, I think you announced that makes me feel more at calm about this deal. I was not happy about the deal when I heard 66 over 3 years. That's a lot of money. I'm assuming we have a out after year 2, which is probably a good thing.
That's a crazy special too, by the way.
And he probably has a void year on there. So
always a void year,
if not 2, right? So we're likely looking at a cap hit of like 11 million, 12 million, somewhere in there. I mean, I don't know. I'm throwing shot in the dark there, but ultimately, I don't think it's that much of an overpay unless he lives out the full of that contract and it is truly a $66 million deal. That's a lot of money for him because again, he is not a top 10 corner, let alone a top 5 corner, which is, that's top 5 corner money currently right now. So,
but we'll talk about it later in this episode because we're re-recording and gonna just kind of piecemeal it together here. But we talked about in the one we recorded before this news broke that like you can overpay. What's up?
I'm looking at the guarantees. It looks like Carlton Davis got 34.5 guarantees. Okay. So he topped it by 500,000. But to Ryan's point, that's an overall contract. He's getting 22 per, but he's only getting 500K more than a Carlton Davis. And I don't know what DJ Reed's deal to me just feels like the best one. I don't know what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
But anyways, keep going, Matt.
Well, what I was going to say is like you can overpay a little bit because you have JJ McCarthy on a rookie quarterback deal. You already have your guys locked up as far as Darrisaw, Jefferson. And so like, yeah, it's way higher than I even imagined. I think we talked, Miles, that like, I think 20 was kind of my threshold. Like,
yep,
that's kind of like, he's not a lockdown corner by any means. But he is very, very good. But $22 million a year is a little bit of a hefty price. But again, we can make these overpays in the short term. And now you have
quarterback. Yep.
Now you have a good corner who knows Flores' system. And so I think, Miles, again, you'll talk about it later in this episode, but you're willing to almost overpay for a guy you know versus a guy that you don't.
And he's still young, and I think that's another part of it too. Is it's not like you're overpaying for a 30-year-old, 29-year-old. I think you're overpaying slightly for a guy that is hitting his like peak of his abilities, and I think that's you're getting his prime. Like the core prime of Byron Murphy should be everything that he's gotten from the Vikings. His time with the Vikings is what you should get out of Byron Murphy's is in his entire prime, and I think that in itself is another positive of this. If you want to spin it that way.
For sure. And to answer your original question, Miles, is this the first overpay that Kwesi's had? No. That happened yesterday when he signed Ryan Wright to the $1.75 million deal.
But that one's not guaranteed. That one's not guaranteed though.
I know. I just joking.
I know you're joking, but I also was like, wait a minute when I saw it too. But I don't think that's guaranteed. And I think if that was guaranteed, I'd have a different. But I don't think it's guaranteed. So as long as it's not, I'm good.
I'll leave you guys with this. Byron Murphy Jr. is now the third highest paid cornerback in the NFL behind Jalen Ramsey and Patrick Surtain.
Well, and J.C. Horn just got 25.
Oh, yeah, and J.C. Horn. Yeah, J.C. Horn just became the highest paid
just happened today.
Yeah,
and then Derek Stingley's about to get one. Sauce Gardner's about to get one. So
it changes every week.
It always does.
But for the moment.
But and he's definitely not that. That's the issue. He's not a top 4 corner. Yeah. So that's where it's hard to stomach, but that's just, I mean, we go through this every year, right? There's, you have a guy who's top 10, 15, 20 type player, and he's going to get paid this until some of these younger guys who are already better than him get paid their first contracts or whatever. So overall, we got a corner that is reliable, that we know that position flexibility, and that hey, he turned out 6 interceptions last year. Hopefully he can make some more splash plays and maybe be a little bit more consistent in coverage on the down to down basis, and we have our guy for the next few years. So
we'll stay tuned for the rest of this episode as we cover the whole free agency day before the Byron Murphy news. And I'm making a statement right now. If we hang up on this recording and another player signs, we're not coming back. So we'll be back later this week. But hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. Day 1 of free agency for the Vikings and most of the NFL is nearly in the books. It's about 8 o'clock on Monday as we record this episode. The Vikings have been kind of quiet for the most part, making some calculated moves. So we brought the band back together tonight. It's Miles, it's Ryan, it's myself, and we're going to talk about the Vikings and what they've kind of done to this point. So I think, kind of the big one that at least surprised me started before free agency, and that was bringing back Aaron Jones on a 2-year deal worth $20 million. Miles, I know Aaron Jones is your guy. Are you kind of surprised at that dollar amount, especially knowing how deep the running back class is?
I think what it shows is the Vikings don't have a lot of draft capital, right? And you have to pigeonhole yourself if you have to go to free agency and get a guy of lesser value, lesser talent. Aaron Jones was far and away, in my opinion, the number 1 running back on the market. Had a really good season, had set career highs in yardage and in total yardage, rushing yards, and I think carries, if I'm not mistaken. Did all of that for the Vikings, and they still ended up having like an overall pretty poor rushing efficiency offense. But I think Aaron Jones, it wasn't because of Aaron Jones. I think you saw that he has plenty of juice left. For me, with Aaron Jones, it was more about, can they get him back? And you might have to pay a little bit of a premium, which they clearly did. But that was because they didn't want him to hit the market. If that man hit the open market, he's probably elsewhere today. Whether it's Denver, it sounds like Denver had a lot of traction and a lot of interest in him, and maybe they signed him for more than what the Vikings were offering. So I think at the end of the day, the Vikings wanted to make sure that they had that set. There's a guy that they really like, they believe in, someone they trust, and I think that's the biggest part of it. Besides knowing the system, they just trust Aaron Jones on the field, point blank period. So I think that for me was like, it's not surprising that he's back. The dollar amount, again, is a little higher than I think we all expected. But with the cap going up, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's essentially a 1-year deal when you look at it. It's essentially a 1-year deal. He gets like $13 million in total guarantees, I think. But if they had to cut him next year, it wouldn't kill them. I think they'd be fine. They could probably post June 1 him if something happens, they need to get rid of him next year. So I think what they wanted to do is make sure they solidified that position heading into the draft. Now they still might go sign like a Cam Akers back or another like low end free agent. We'll see. But overall, I thought it was a good deal. I think it makes sense for both sides, and I think it's good that the Vikings can now hopefully pair him with let's say like a 3rd round, 5th round pick in the draft, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think the most ideal scenario was always kind of bringing Aaron Jones back and then spelling some of his carries for one of these young rookie running backs.
That's right? The key point. Yeah, Matt, like keep going, because I think that's the key there too.
Yeah, well, he's getting older, but he showed last year, especially in the beginning of the season, like he's still got juice to him. But you could tell as the year goes on, he's an older running back, and he's a 3-down back, really. You just need somebody in there to kind of provide that spark and give him some time to rest. And I think if you can get Aaron Jones a counterpart and cut his carries by a third,
yep.
When you get to the postseason, assuming we make it there next year, which I'd like to think we will, having a healthy or a less wear and tear on Aaron Jones in the playoffs is going to pay huge, huge dividends.
Well, you saw Aaron Jones at his best in Green Bay when he had that complementary piece with him.
Jamal Williams,
and even I'm just the guy.
AJ Dillon.
AJ Dillon, thank you, Ryan. And AJ Dillon, like those guys when they could split carries with him, and he was hyper efficient, averaging like 5.5, 6 yards a carry at times. Like there was seasons where Aaron Jones may not have put up like gaudy numbers, but the numbers were highly efficient. And I think that's what the Vikings want to get to with an Aaron Jones, and you pair him with, you name the rookie running back. So hopefully it's someone. I think there's lots of names because it's a very deep class. Ryan could probably tell you all the names. But yeah, I just think overall, I think that's the ideal scenario for Aaron Jones and the Vikings this year. And it also, we'll get into like some of the signings that they had, but having Aaron Jones is another security blanket for a JJ McCarthy. And I think that is also another important part, that just bringing some random running back into the room that you don't know or don't trust, you have that in Aaron Jones. So I think that in itself is going to help JJ McCarthy a lot.
And I've seen a lot of people like talk about, hey, now that you have an Aaron Jones, who's more of a slasher, kind of a smaller guy, that you want to go ahead and bring in a big back, like again, obviously a popular name even without this would be Caleb Johnson. But there's other bigger backs, Damian Martinez and Ollie Gordon and whatnot. I don't necessarily think you need to pigeonhole yourself there. Again, if you get a guy, again, I know everyone on this channel is a big fan of DJ Giddens. If he happens to be there, or even like a Travion Henderson, who's a very similar style play to an Aaron Jones, you would be able to, I think, have like a 1-2 punch of like both burners, which I don't think is a bad thing. And then you have kind of that heir apparent. So hopefully we go that route.
I know people were kind of like a little shocked when the Aaron Jones contract came out, but I think the one thing that I would preface, and it's official today, so we'll get into the Sam Darnold stuff in a second, but now that the Vikings are truly committed to JJ McCarthy moving forward, you can pay a little bit more because you have the quarterback rookie deal. And so, like, yes, you should be a little bit conscious of like what your money is doing for you. But at the end of the day, like if you need to spend an extra couple million to make sure that you get a guy that you want, you have that luxury now. You don't have to worry about, the bottom of the barrel, just scraping by. So like, Aaron Jones 2 for, $20 million. I'm fine with that. Where I'm interested to see things is with guard, because the Packers today went out and got Aaron Banks. Is that who it was? For like $77 million over 4 years.
It was like 19.3 million. And if like if you look at the entire contract, it was like over 19 million APY. And that's just
insane. And as we're recording, we have not heard of a Will Fries signing. I'm taking a look just to make sure, but I mean, when you're talking about having to pay up, like they're going to have to pay up for a guard, they're going to have to pay up for a corner. These corners are going for mad money today.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Charvarius Ward going for 20 mil, which is again, he's a very, very high quality corner when he's healthy and not going through family stuff. And I mean, there was obviously a lot that he dealt with last year, but and he was my number 2 wish list corner behind Adebo. So I was really excited about potentially getting one of those two. My top 2 guys are gone. So yeah, now we're looking at, okay, what else is out there? And unfortunately, it looks like you might be having to overpay, whether it's a Byron Murphy or a Christian Bolton. Asante Samuel Jr. Yeah. Like I think Asante Samuel Jr. is my like third favorite corner to try to go get today. And I think he's still out there. But either way, it's where you think you're going to get these guys for maybe. I think earlier this offseason I was like, oh, like 10 mil a year. No, that's just not happening, unfortunately. So
when I saw that Paulson Adebo those first numbers come through, I was like, there's no way. It didn't add up because at first they reported like 3 for 30. And I was like, there's no way any other team wouldn't blow that number out of the water. And then you come to find out it was actually, 3 for 48 or something like that, which made way more sense for a Paulson Adebo at 25, who was really good in 2023. Obviously had the femur injury in 2024, but looks healthy now. I think that's a really good get for the Giants.
I think he's like the leader in like incompletion percentage or whatever over the last couple of years. I mean, the fact that people weren't talking about him more and we're so fixated on DJ Reed this whole offseason. I know both of you were big fans of DJ Reed, so this is like no shade. I'm just like, Ryan. Adebo is like my guy. Like that was a guy I really wanted because of the age.
He fit the Kwesi mold of what he goes after in free agency, though. These last couple of years is that guy coming out the rookie contract, still young, may have had a down 20 like current season, but he was really good the year before. Like that's been Kwesi's kind of MO when he finds some of those diamonds in the rough. Like so, I was all about Adebo. I still like DJ Reed. Kind of sucks that he goes to the Lions, and then my other guy was Nate Hobbs, who I thought was an underrated corner in this class, who goes to of course the Packers. So that's just shade to me. But
if Miles likes a prospect or a free agent target, it's almost a damn sure bet that they're going to go to a division rival.
It's true.
It sure seems like it.
Yep. Well, just to the point on corners, I think it really did feel like the only guy that they were willing to maybe even, we'll see if it ends up happening, that they'd be willing to overpay for is Byron Murphy. And I think that's because they've gotten to the point where they're going to have to. But I also think he's the guy that they know. And I think it's easier to overpay for a guy that you know than to overpay for a guy you don't know. Yeah. And Byron Murphy's still 27. Just turned 27, I think. So still super young. I think if you structure the contract right, I was against paying him like $19-20 million a year, but they're at a point where they kind of have to. I'd get over it. Like they have rookie. Like if you're gonna overpay for somebody, I'd rather overpay for a corner than overpay at left guard, like we talked about earlier. We'll see. But I don't know if there's enough guys out there that I would feel comfortable bringing in and letting Byron Murphy walk just because of a couple $1 million.
Yeah, I don't think you can gamble anymore, kind of to wait and see or even play the game of chicken, right? Like Byron Murphy is far and away the best guy out there. And if you don't bring him back, and I know, Ryan, you mentioned Samuel, but I just still think that Byron Murphy provides so much still when you talk about the versatility inside and out in the nickel or on the outside corner. He needs to be priority number one for me over even like a Jonathan Allen, who we know came in to visit this year or today, and in Will Fries.
I still struggle, right? Like I don't care what the market says.
You can't piecemeal that cornerback room together again.
I know, but like $20 million for a top 20 corner is just like, that's hard to stomach, in my opinion. I mean, again, like Miles said, depending how you structure the contract, and how many years it's for, right? But like, if you're signing a 4-year deal at $20 million plus per for a top 20 corner, when a top 5 corners who had just got paid is barely making more than that, it's just tough to stomach. Where I would say, let's go put our resources in at the D tackle and in the guard and beef up the line, and then use draft capital to get a corner, and maybe grab one or two of these guys in the draft. But
what draft capital?
I know that's the issue. That's the issue,
right? Like they don't have draft capital, so use the cap space you have. And,
right. I mean, I get it. Get it. I was very frustrated with Murphy at times last year.
I was too, by the way. I don't disagree.
He got 6 interceptions. That's great. But like, he also got burned quite often and either got bailed out by a drop ball or he just let up the play. And again, he's not a bad corner. He graded as a top 20 corner. That's great. I have a hard time paying that kind of money when
I get it.
Yeah, but I mean, if they decide to do that, am I going to be mad about it? Absolutely not.
They did sign Isaiah Rodgers though, which was kind of an underrated signing, and that deal is good. I mean, I'll take 2 years, $11 million for a cornerback who, when he has played well. And you talk about a guy that fits the Kwesi mold. He's still a younger guy. This is maybe kind of a prove it contract for him to try to hit the open market in a couple of years if he can do something here. Go ahead, Ryan.
And the beauty of it is Minnesota doesn't have sports gambling yet. That just got shut down. So we can kind of keep him on the field, hopefully, at that point.
Well, he's out of the league, I think, if he gets caught again with that. But what's interesting is I think people initially thought like, oh, Isaiah Rodgers brought in, that's the end of Byron Murphy. We found our slot corner. But Isaiah Rodgers is not a slot corner. He's 5'10", so very short. I know Ryan is not happy about bringing in more short cornerbacks, but he's primarily an outside guy. And so, what are your guys' thoughts on Isaiah Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, I was happy with the signing. Again, yes, I don't love short cornerbacks, but at the same time, if you can play, you can play. I would ideally like to say, hey, let's get a corner that can be 6 foot, that can go against a DK Metcalf or AJ Brown or whoever it is. That's a big body guy. They're just going to bully these little guys around, I think. But ultimately, he's a good player, and it's a prove it deal, like you said, and it's relatively cheap. And actually, I was a big fan of his whenever he got reinstated and was a free agent. I was like, hey, let's go grab this guy and see what we can, reclamation project. Unfortunately, he went to the Eagles and won a Super Bowl, and good for him. Hopefully he can come in and make a difference. I mean, I think when Darius Slay was out last year, he kind of got pressed into duty, and I think he played quite well in that limited experience. And if you can have a team not necessarily miss Darius Slay on the field, you must be doing something right. So hopefully we hit a little diamond in the rough here.
Yeah, I really like the deal. And I think what it shows is Brian Flores kind of likes smaller corners. Like, for real. Like, he kind of like Byron Murphy Jr. is 5'11", like 170, 190. Mekhi Blackman, who he drafted last couple years ago, is like 5'10" and change. Isaiah Rodgers 5'10", 170. So he kind of, besides like usually the big lengthy guys that we know he's had in the past, he's handpicked these smaller corners. So it's kind of surprising to me a little bit. Just based on
I was gonna say with the Dolphins, he had Byron Jones, right? And then Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah. I just thought it's funny because these are the ones he's handpicked in Minnesota. Right. I know there's been other guys, like obviously Shaq Griffin, Stephon Gilmore, and then I know he had drafted Kyrie Jackson, rest in peace. But like all those things, like those are bigger corners too. So it does make you wonder though, how he builds out, how they like shape out that room. Even if they bring Byron Murphy back, they're still going to need another bigger body guy in the room. Where do they go in free agency, or do they look at the draft? All kinds of plays there. But I think what Isaiah Rodgers at least gives you is a guy that can run, and I think that's a huge part of it. He's a clicking close speed type guy. He's a guy that's not going to get burnt deep typically. And I think that's a big part of it too. So excited to see him just kind of fit into the defense and kind of run around, because the one thing that they love to do is speed. Byron Flores loves speed on his defense, and Isaiah Rodgers has a lot of it, and I think that's gonna go a long way for this defense.
I was just looking quickly because I was like, well, maybe they'll address cornerback in the draft. And we had Jordan Reed on the show last week, and he dropped a couple names at corner that the Vikings would fit well. Obviously, the Barron kid out of Texas. He's 5'11", though, and that's kind of what I was looking for, is the height. And then Thomas out of Florida State, he's 6'1", so maybe they go that route to try and beef up that room. I keep getting notifications that O-linemen are getting taken off the board here.
James Daniels to the Dolphins.
Yeah, and Larry Borum, I don't know who that is.
Oh, he was with the Bears.
Bears offensive tackle.
Tackle. Going to the draft corners, I mean, I think in that tier that we're going to be in, where the corners are going to be available to us, I think there is going to be a lot of big guys actually available that are quality. Barron might get there and again, he's 5'10", 5'11". But Trey Amos, I think he's 6 foot or maybe 5'11", but like hedging on 6 foot. Siobhan Revel. He's I think like 6'2", 6'3". I mean, he's a big corner.
He's a bigger guy.
Ben Morrison, he's 6 foot. So I mean, you have some guys that are going to have some size there. Your boy Maxwell Harrison, I think he's like 6'3". And then you had mentioned Thomas, who I'm a big fan of as well, at 6'1". So there's definitely going to be some size at corner. So I think what's going to be interesting is, do we make a play on John Allen, right, who's here today? Do we go bring in, I don't know, I mentioned a couple names on there for like lower tier guys, but like a Bobby Brown, who actually has been pretty productive with the Rams.
He's with the Panthers.
Oh, did he sign today? I haven't been keeping up all day, but
when I think when Carolina lost out on Milton Williams, they pivoted to Tershawn Wharton and Bobby Brown. They, instead of going one guy, they went two.
Oh, they signed both, because those are my two, like after Milton. Those are my two like lists. But either way, though, if they go and sign another, D tackle or what have you, do they go D tackle in the draft? Like I've been a big Derek Harmon guy, right? But if we can't get a big corner in free agency, do we maybe pivot our potential strategy to that? And there's going to be a lot of guys at that position around where we're drafting that have that size.
The other free agent signing that we made today is pulling away Ryan Kelly from the Indianapolis Colts. 2 years, $18 million. I think maybe a little bit of a surprise for folks. I know that he was kind of linked to us at times, but it did seem, at least to me, that the Vikings were maybe committed to one more season of Garrett Bradbury, but it looks to be maybe the end of his tenure here in Minnesota with this signing.
Yeah, you saying he should move to guard? Like, no.
Here's my only reason for saying it. I don't think you save enough, like money-wise, to get rid of Garrett Bradbury. And given Ryan Kelly's injury history, let Bradbury battle it out with Brandel at left guard if you don't have any other signings.
Have you seen Bradbury and Brandel stand next to each other? One of them's 6'7", 320. The other one's 6'1", 6'2", 280.
I didn't say I had to start. I'm just saying I don't want to get rid of Bradbury entirely.
You mean you don't want to lose him for nothing? Is essentially what you're saying? Right.
And I don't even know if I want to trade him. I think I'd want to just ride it out with him this year.
If you can get something for him, I would move him, because
I'd trade him for sure.
Ryan Kelly's a clear upgrade. I think we all know that.
Yeah.
They didn't just sign Ryan Kelly because they think Bradbury's good. They signed Ryan Kelly because they know he's a clear upgrade and they know the interior needs the improvement. And I'm with you that I was a little surprised, just because I thought the guards are going to be the focus. But I think maybe as they saw some of the money flying off the board with some of these guards, they pivoted. And Ryan Grigson, who's high up in Kwesi's like inner core, drafted Ryan Kelly in Indianapolis, and that was one of the things he got right. He got that one right, because Ryan Kelly's been really good. And I think that's
and a huge plus pass protector. I mean,
yes, and that was
every year, like every year, he's kind of been up and down a bit on the run blocking, aspect of his game. But one thing that's never really dipped, and again, I went through every year of his PFF grades, and I think 1 year he dipped below like 70 in pass protection. Outside of that, it's always been 70 plus. He's just been a really good pass protector. And when you have a JJ McCarthy back there that you're protecting, the kind of the cornerstone there, and the huge gap that Bradbury brings is, and to go back to Miles's point, putting him at guard, that's just putting him for sure in battles against these big D tackles who are already dominating him with one arm, basically, as they're he's trying to do double teams and less protect. Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, he's protected at center, he's not going to be at guard, and so you wouldn't. If anything, maybe you bring Kelly in at guard because he's bigger and stronger. But like, why would you do that?
They didn't sign Ryan Kelly, who's literally been an above average center for the last decade.
Yeah,
to come in and not play center. I think what he does though is maybe we'll see if they get Will Fries. I know that's been the big name. He hasn't still been signed. One of the only top names left that hasn't been signed. If they can get a Will Fries, you might feel comfortable heading into the draft. I'm not saying he becomes the week 1 starter, but heading into the draft, maybe you still keep Brando at left guard, give him some competition, but you have that center and right guard solidified. Teddy, don't. And so maybe you have all that solidified, and then you go into the draft and maybe you find somebody to help compete against Brandel.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things too is I know that there's been talk internally with Walter Rouse moving into guard as well. So you have that as a possibility for battles. Maybe you draft a guy, and with that, I believe we're getting a 3rd round compensatory pick potentially there. So if you're getting that, maybe you use that on a guy that would maybe be available at that point. Who knows who that would be? But no, I am very excited about the Ryan Kelly signing. I think back, I don't know, January or something when we were starting to discuss this stuff, right? I put on offensive lineman list, Ryan Kelly is my top center for us, even over Drew Dahlman. And the main issue I had with Drew, very good player, he's just a slightly better Bradbury, who's an undersized, really good run blocker, somewhat struggles in pass protection. I wanted a really strong pass protector. Like, that's what we need on this team. We need to protect the future franchise of our team. So I want to be bringing in guys who are strong pass protectors, and we'll figure out the run game.
Only 18 pressures allowed in the last 2 seasons, by the way.
Yeah.
Ryan Kelly.
The one thing that Vikings have now done is they have solidified the center and the tackles. Now they got to figure out guards. Maybe it's still Brandel. I think I wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to give him another shot. But I think, if they can find that right guard and they solidify that, this would be a really good offensive line. And they found ways the last couple of years since KOC got here to be a pretty good offensive line. But this can help this, plus maybe you add another guard, whether it's Will Fries or somebody else, could make this line an above average, stable offensive line that we haven't seen since 2012?
2012, yeah. I think it was the AP year, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's other guys out there too. I mean, again, I'm not saying that they're great or anything, but who knows, maybe with better coaching. I mean, Tevin Jenkins played well last year. I know he got hurt, but he graded out really well in both pass and run blocking. So, maybe you bring him in at a slightly lower deal, or maybe you bring both of them in, and now you have a solidified offensive line like the Bears did, and kind of see what you have there, and you can kind of focus on the D tackle and corner and safety and running back in the draft.
Yeah, and
with our 4 picks that we have.
And if they needed to piecemeal just for kind of a season, just to kind of get themselves through with JJ McCarthy, Brandon Scherf's still out there. Is it Scherf, whatever?
Yeah.
Kevin Zeitler's still out there. There are yes, I think we all would say Will Fries is the ideal one because of his age, what the current contract is, and the potential upside. But there are names out there that if you had to pivot, you could still find a starter that can solidify the position for a year or 2. And I think that's fine. I don't think that's a bad thing, and give you more time to address other areas of the probably defense at that point.
I did find it funny that the Bears got Grady Jarrett, and then hours later, the Vikings are like, we cannot put Bradbury up against that 2 times a year. Let's because we haven't signed anybody else, and this show's getting close to wrapping here. Let's talk about some of the big name guys that left today. So obviously, I think the biggest one that we all hoped and assumed would happen is Sam Darnold leaving to the Seattle Seahawks. I believe his contract was 3 years, $110 million. Is that what I saw?
I've seen conflicting reports, 110 and just 100.5.
It's 100.5 that can get up to 110 in
Got
incentives, and then it's 55 guaranteed. And on that, there is no way somebody was trading for him off the tag on that. No way. I've seen
the tag's higher than that.
He gets 37 in year 1. That's less than the tag.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest part that people miss is what is the first year money? What's coming to Sam Darnold in that first year that's guaranteed? And that's that 37 million, right? And that's not the tag. And I think if the tag, that's why I'd always said, if the Vikings were going to do anything with Darnold, which never made sense unless they truly wanted him back, was to transition tag him, because that number was 35 and a half, 36, I think. Don't quote me. It's somewhere in that range. Whereas the franchise tag was 41. That number was just always too high for Sam Darnold to get as a baseline for any new extension. It was
Yeah.
always too much. And I think as we see, he got a Baker Mayfield contract. He got what Baker Mayfield essentially got, maybe just a tick higher. I think literally a tick higher than what
Like
Baker got.
0.5, like
Yeah,
500K. Yeah.
exactly. And I think that is a fair market for Sam. I really do. I think what he did, what you saw him do, and I think his ability just as a playmaker, and what he did this last year shows that he can do that with a lot of teams. And I think him going to the Seahawks, we'll see if they shore up their O-line and their receiving room. But I think he put himself in a good position and got a good contract. And the Vikings were never going to do that.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, you'll get that 3rd round comp pick next year, and you thank Sam Darnold for his service. I think we've all kind of been on board with that being the plan, and so they finally went ahead and did it. So,
quick little funny story, obviously, whatever. But we were at church on Sunday, and we had a guest speaker from Seattle.
Was it Kevin O'Connell?
No, he has been to that church, but and we had a guest speaker from Seattle, and he big Seattle Seahawks fan or whatever. So he's like, "What are you guys gonna do with Sam Darnold?" And I hear he might be coming to Seattle or whatever. And it's funny, half of the people there were like, "We want him back," and half the people are like, "No, JJ McCarthy." And it's kind of funny how it all worked out. I'm sitting there screaming like, "No, JJ McCarthy, let's go!" But yeah, it's kind of funny that he ended up signing there, which is great.
What I'm thankful for is I think for the first time that I can remember, Viking fans are kind of all in on the same quarterback. Like there's not two sides to this. Everybody wants and is hoping for JJ to succeed. We'll see what happens after the first few games, but as of now, that is kind of how everybody is feeling about the quarterback room. So the other guy that left, really no shock, especially at the price that he went for. Cam Bynum leaves to the Colts for 4 years, $60 million.
Big contract for him. Good for him.
Would you guys have done it?
No.
The writing seemed to always be on the wall when they got Theo Jackson at the number he did, because he plays a similar role in what Bynum would play in that deep half of the field type of safety, whereas like Metellus is that roll down guy, even Harrison Smith more the roll down guy. So I think that was the writing on the wall for me. So no, I think it's clear that the Vikings weren't willing to pay him that, and I think 15 was, I always felt a little too high. Bynum's good. I don't think he's like 15 million per good. Probably close though. So like,
I mean,
Vikings came close maybe, but
I think it depends on like what a guy like Javon Holland goes for. What did Mayrig get?
He got paid too.
51, if I'm not mistaken. Carolina signed him too.
So like 17. See, like I would have rather paid Mayrig that, or again, if Holland gets something close to what Trayvon got there, that makes a little bit more sense to me than what. Again, Bynum was fine; he's good, and he's a good locker room guy, and brings great vibes. But on field production, good, not great. Probably not 15 million great, right?
Yeah.
But like wish him the best. He brought a lot of fun to this team. And again, a lot of really big plays for this club as well. So like it's been kind of bittersweet, right? Just because I'm happy to not pay that much money,
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like you don't want to lose the man, the person.
Right.
I think he brought a lot of great things outside of football to this team. So, but yeah, I mean, if we can transition to, and I know it's not likely, it sounds like a lot of people are pretty down on the fact that Javon Holland coming here is a possibility, but I really hope it still is one, because I think he'd be a great addition to this team. And I think, that being said, though, if he does get signed here, it probably means the end of the Harrison Smith era here.
Yeah, it's either one or the other, it feels like, for sure, especially after the Theo Jackson extension. So
Yeah.
A lot of options still kind of on the table for the Vikings. I know fans, they want the big splashes day one. They want to do what the Bears did today, and I get it. But it takes a lot of time to kind of navigate these contracts in real time and decide if you're really willing to pay some of these guys. Like before free agency open, we would have scoffed at potentially paying Byron Murphy maybe 16, 17 million. And now it looks like his market's 20. Well, I know you wouldn't have, but in general, I'm saying. So yeah, a lot of time still for Kwesi and company to kind of get their things figured out, and if anything in the past would tell us as soon as we're done recording here, there'll be a free agent move, because that's just kind of how it's worked here on Vikings Happy Hour.
Like, you guys, like, speaking of Doogie, it sounds like things might have gone dark for now, but there's still obviously interest in Fries, and they have another plan, a plan B at guard if it's not Fries, it sounds like. And then I don't know what the deal is with with Jonathan Allen's visit. Normally we would hear if it had ended, so we'll see. Maybe that's something that we hear tonight versus like anything else. And I'm kind of surprised we just haven't heard about Daniel Jones. Because I was watching some of I think it was NFL Network earlier, and they were like, "Oh, we're expected to hear around like noon, 1 o'clock Eastern time or Central time about Daniel Jones," and that man still hasn't made a decision. So
yeah, that is kind of strange. The one thing on the Jonathan Allen piece is, I know people are making a really big deal about the fact that he's in town visiting TCO Performance Center, but I will say his agency is also here in the cities, so it can kind of be like a dual thing. He can be visiting his agency and not necessarily the Vikings, even though he is at TCO. So I guess I wouldn't read too much into it if he does end up leaving without a deal. Very well could still sign with the Vikings. Before we go, guys, give me one prediction or wish list free agent signing that has yet to happen as of 8:30 on Monday. Wow, you guys just don't want him to do anything.
I didn't know you were going to ask that. So
yeah, now I'm like thinking, who do I want most?
If they don't do Jonathan Allen, I'm still on the Levi Onwuzurike train.
Okay.
I think that would be a good one. But everybody else has like been signed.
I know.
I thought Matt Pryor. I'm surprised Matt Pryor doesn't have a bigger market. I thought he was really good for Chicago last year. Now I know it's only 1 year, but there's a few other of those like offensive linemen that are still. Mekhi Becton's still out there. Again, I don't expect him for the Vikings because of the O-line coach. But I'm surprised we just haven't heard much about him either.
Yeah.
What about like, I mean, granted, this would be like a positional move or whatever, but like, what about like this seems like a Kwesi move, like a reclamation project of like Jedrick Wills.
So,
and moving him to guard or something. I don't know.
Nick Miller has been on that to me for months.
Oh,
he
really?
said that to me like 3 months ago. He was like Jedrick Wills to guard, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm like looking at the free agency list and I'm like, all right, where are some names here that seem like interesting that maybe could be like a fun thing? And that's one that just popped out.
Kyle Juszczyk
just got cut
by the 49ers.
Wow.
Now, I don't want to get rid of CJ Ham if they're going to do it for. Now, Juszczyk's good, but I don't think they would move off of CJ Ham for him.
No, and they shouldn't really. I've heard some rumors of Jeff Okudah.
Yeah.
Alec Lewis dropped that name today.
There's a big corner for you.
Yeah, I mean, like what? He's 6 foot, 6'1", something like that. But I don't know how well he played last year. I know he's kind of been up and down in his career, but gosh, he was so good at Ohio State. You'd think he would just be like.
He was so good.
So I don't know what's going on there, but maybe Flores can get the best out of him.
Maybe.
Well, he'd kind of be like a Shaq Griffin type replacement to me.
And that's perfect. Bring him in. 1 year deal.
He was not very good last year. He only played like 80 snaps.
For me, I would say a realistic is just pay up for Will Fries, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Solidify 4 out of 5 spots on your O-line for your star rookie quarterback.
Yep.
That's my realistic wish list. My far-fetched one is Stephon Diggs, 1 year prove it deal.
I'm always
of course.
I'm always down for that.
14 just opened up, so he can take it back.
He could take it back. Number 1's open too if you wanted to.
That's true.
In Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure. From a money standpoint, I'd prefer he goes 14 because then I can just take the old jersey back out. But 1 is fine too.
And Javon Holland, I mean, I think that's like my dream.
Sure.
Like that would be amazing. And if you don't get him, Justin Reed would also be a very interesting signing here. He leadership and just lays the hammer on people. So that's fun from a safety position.
For sure. Anything else from you two as we wrap it here? It's been good to get back. I think the last time this crew specifically was on a show was Lake Monster, where I accidentally ended the live stream early, and then we just went dark for like a year and a half. So yeah, that's true. Anyway, we will be back later this week with more content. We'll kind of stay in touch with what's going on with the Vikings, but for sure back Wednesday. Thor Nystrom will be joining, and then TBD on content moving forward. But we'll keep you up to date with free agency stuff, with draft stuff right around the corner. It's just getting started for the Vikings. So make sure you hit like and subscribe. Stay up to date with everything that we got coming for you. And until next time, Skol Vikings.